The truck engine dies with a shudder that echoes off the pine trees surrounding the cabin. Clara sits behind the wheel for a moment, staring at the weathered structure ahead. Paint peels from its siding like old skin, and the porch sags under the weight of decades. She came here because Mrs. Henderson at the general store said the woman who lived here could sew anything. What Mrs. Henderson hadn't mentioned was how the place felt like stepping into a photograph that had been left too long in the sun. Clara pushes the truck door open and steps onto ground that crunches with fallen leaves. The air smells of wood smoke and something else she can't name. Something old. She walks up the 3 crooked steps to the porch. Her grandmother's dress is folded carefully in the canvas bag slung over her shoulder. The fabric still holds traces of lavender water and memories she's trying not to think about. She raises her fist to knock on the door. The wood looks solid enough, painted a deep green that's faded to something closer to moss. Her knuckles are inches from the surface when the door swings open on silent hinges. The woman standing there has silver hair pulled back tight and skin the color of old leather, but it's the eye patch covering her left eye that stops Clara cold. The remaining eye studies Clara with an intensity that makes her want to step backward. "You're here about the quilt." Clara's mouth opens, but no words come out. She hadn't told anyone exactly why she was coming here, just that she needed something sewn. "How did you know that?" "I've been expecting you." Clara Hartwell. The sound of her own name hits Clara like cold water. She never gave her name to Mrs. Henderson, never called ahead, never even decided she was definitely coming until this morning when she woke up and couldn't stand looking at her grandmother's dresses hanging in the closet anymore. "I don't understand." "You don't have to understand. Not yet." The stitcher steps back from the doorway. "Come in." Clara hesitates. Something about this feels wrong, like walking into a story someone else has already written. But the weight of the dresses in her bag pulls her forward. She crosses the threshold and immediately feels the temperature drop 10 degrees. The inside of the cabin defies its modest exterior. Quilts hang from every wall, suspended like tapestries in a medieval hall. Each one tells a different story through its patterns. Some show simple geometric designs in faded blues and browns. Others display intricate scenes that seem to move when Clara isn't looking directly at them. A quilt near the window depicts a forest scene so realistic she can almost hear wind moving through the trees. "Sit." The stitcher gestures toward a wooden chair beside a small table covered in sewing supplies. Spools of thread in every color imaginable create small towers across its surface. Needles of various sizes lie arranged in precise rows like tiny soldiers. Clara sits, still clutching her bag. The stitcher moves to a rocking chair opposite her. When she settles into it, the chair creaks rhythmically, even though she's sitting perfectly still. "Your grandmother's dresses." "Yes." "I want them made into something she can be remembered by. A quilt, maybe, or a quilt." The stitcher's single eye never leaves Clara's face. "She was a good woman, your grandmother. Strong hands. Knew how to keep secrets." "You knew her." "I know lots of things." The stitcher reaches toward Clara's bag. "May I?" Clara hands over the bag without thinking. The stitcher's fingers are long and thin, moving through the folded dresses with a familiarity that makes Clara's skin crawl. She lifts each piece and examines it closely, running the fabric between her fingers like she's reading Braille. "This blue one, she wore it to church every Sunday for 20 years. How could you possibly know that? And this yellow dress, she had it on the day your grandfather proposed." Clara's hands start shaking. Her grandmother died 6 months ago. These dresses have been in Clara's closet since the funeral. No one else has seen them. "I think I should go." "You came here for a reason, Clara Hartwell. Reasons don't disappear just because you're scared." The stitcher sets the dresses on the table and picks up a needle. It catches the light streaming through the window and throws tiny rainbows across the quilts on the walls. "Besides," the stitcher continues, threading the needle with movements too quick to follow, "I've already started your quilt." She nods toward a corner of the room Clara hadn't noticed before. There, stretched across a wooden frame, is a quilt in progress. The pattern is unlike any of the others hanging on the walls. This one seems to pulse with its own inner light, and in each of the 4 corners, sewn in delicate script, is Clara's name. Clara stares at her name stitched into the corners of the unfinished quilt. The letters seem to glow in the dim cabin light, each stitch perfectly formed despite being impossibly small. How did you know I was coming? Sit down, child. The stitcher gestures to the wooden chair beside her work table. We have much to discuss. Clara doesn't move. Every instinct tells her to grab her grandmother's dresses and run, but something keeps her rooted to the spot, watching the needle flash in the woman's weathered hands. I came here because I need a memorial quilt. My grandmother passed 6 months ago. These were her dresses. Clara's voice sounds hollow in the small space. I want something to remember her by. I know what you want. The stitcher sets down her needle and moves to a chest in the corner. When she lifts the lid, Clara sees fabric pieces already cut and arranged. The colors match her grandmother's dresses exactly. The question is whether you're ready for what you'll remember. What are you talking about? The stitcher lifts out a piece of blue fabric. It's from the dress Clara brought, but it's been cut into a perfect hexagon with edges so precise they could have been measured with a ruler. Your grandmother came to me once. That's impossible. She never left the county, never even went to the next town over. Didn't she? The stitcher's single eye fixes on Clara's face. In that gaze, Clara sees something that makes her stomach clench. Knowledge, secrets, the weight of things that should have stayed buried. Grandmama lived in the same house for 60 years. She told me stories about every neighbor, every family that moved away, every change that happened in town. She would have mentioned meeting you. Would she? The stitcher arranges the fabric pieces on her work table. Each piece fits perfectly with the others, creating a pattern that looks familiar but wrong at the same time. Or would she have kept some things to herself? Clara watches the woman's hands move across the fabric. Her fingers seem to know exactly where each piece belongs without measuring or checking. The movements are too fluid, too certain. What kind of pattern is this? It's called a memory keeper. Each piece holds something that was. Each stitch binds it to what is. I don't understand. You will. The stitcher picks up her needle again. The thread she chooses is deep red, darker than blood. Your grandmother understood. That's why she came to me. When? The night before your grandfather died. Clara's breath catches. Her grandfather had a heart attack in his sleep. Sudden. Unexpected. The doctors said there was nothing anyone could have done. She didn't know that was going to happen, didn't she? The stitcher begins sewing, her needle moving through fabric with mechanical precision. She brought me a lock of his hair, said she needed protection for what was coming. Protection from what? From forgetting, from losing the thread that held your family together. The needle flashes in and out of the fabric. With each stitch, the pattern becomes clearer. It's not just geometric shapes. There are images forming in the spaces between the pieces. A house with a wraparound porch, a well with a broken cover, a grove of trees where something is buried. I know that house. Clara leans forward. That's where I grew up, where Grandmama raised me after my parents died. And the well, behind the house. Grandmama always said it was dangerous, made me promise never to go near it. The stitcher's hands never pause. More images emerge from her needlework. A young woman standing in a garden, an old man sitting on a porch swing, children playing in a yard that looks exactly like the one from Clara's childhood. How are you doing this? The same way your grandmother did it, the same way her grandmother did it, the same way you'll do it when your time comes. My time for what? To keep the memories, to hold the threads, to make sure the important things don't disappear. Clara stands up abruptly. The chair scrapes against the wooden floor. I just want a quilt made from my grandmother's dresses. That's all, something simple. Nothing about your family has ever been simple, Clara Hartwell. The way she says the name makes Clara's skin crawl, like she's claiming ownership of it, like she's been saying it for years. You don't know anything about my family. I know your great-grandmother died in childbirth, but not before she whispered something to the midwife. I know your grandmother never told you why your parents really died. I know there's a reason you've never married, never had children, never left this county for more than a few days at a time. Stop. I know you dream about the well behind your house. I know you wake up with dirt under your fingernails and no memory of how it got there. Clara's hands fly to her nails. They're clean now. But she remembers waking up yesterday morning with black earth caked underneath them. She'd assumed she'd been gardening and forgotten about it. The thread runs deep in your bloodline, child. Your grandmother came to me because she knew her time was ending. She knew you'd need guidance when the gift fully awakened. What gift? The stitcher holds up the fabric. In the afternoon light streaming through the window, the images in the quilt seem to move. The woman in the garden turns her head. The children in the yard run toward something Clara can't see. The gift to remember what others choose to forget, to see what others refuse to acknowledge, to hold the truth even when it burns. The truck tires kick up dust as Clara speeds down the dirt road away from the stitcher's cabin. Her hands shake on the steering wheel. The woman's words echo in her head like a song she can't stop humming. The gift to remember what others choose to forget, to see what others refuse to acknowledge, to hold the truth even when it burns. Clara presses harder on the gas pedal. The speedometer climbs past 50 on a road meant for 30. She needs to get home, needs to prove the stitcher wrong. Her grandmother was an open book, told Clara everything about their family history. There were no secrets. The farmhouse appears through the trees, white paint peeling from its weathered siding. Clara's been living here alone since the funeral, unable to sell the place, but unable to make it feel like home again. Too many memories hang in every room like cobwebs she can't quite brush away. She slams the truck door and walks up the porch steps 2 at a time. The front door sticks like it always has. Clara puts her shoulder into it and stumbles into the living room when it finally gives way. Everything looks exactly like it did when her grandmother was alive. The doilies on the side tables, the photographs on the mantelpiece, the rocking chair positioned perfectly to catch the afternoon light. Clara had thought keeping things unchanged would help her feel less alone. Instead, it feels like living in a museum dedicated to someone she's starting to realize she never really knew. The attic ladder creaks under her weight. Dust motes dance in the shaft of light coming through the small window. Clara hasn't been up here since they moved her grandmother's belongings after the funeral. Cardboard boxes line the walls, each one labeled in her grandmother's careful handwriting. Christmas decorations, photo albums, important papers. Clara pulls down the box marked important papers first. Inside, she finds what she expected: birth certificates, insurance policies, the deed to the house, medical records from her grandmother's final illness. Nothing unusual, nothing that suggests secrets. She moves to the next box. Photo albums. Her grandmother had been meticulous about documenting family history. Every birthday, every holiday, every milestone carefully preserved in albums with dates written in white ink on black pages. Clara flips through them quickly, looking for anything that might connect to the stitcher. The photographs show exactly what she remembers. Her grandparents on their wedding day, her parents as children, Clara herself growing up in this house after her parents died in the car accident. Normal family pictures. Normal family life. The third box isn't labeled. Clara almost skips it, but something makes her lift the lid. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, are letters tied with ribbon. The paper is yellowed with age, the ink faded but still legible. Clara unties the ribbon and unfolds the first letter. The handwriting stops her cold. She's seen it before. Today. On scraps of paper tacked to the stitcher's cabin wall. Delicate script that flows across the page like water. My dearest Margaret. The letter begins. The debt grows heavier with each passing year. I fear what will happen when it comes due. Clara's grandmother's name was Margaret. Clara reads faster, her heart pounding. The girl shows signs of the gift. You must prepare her, as your mother prepared you. The thread cannot be broken. The memories cannot be lost. The letter is signed with a single initial. S. Clara grabs another letter from the pile. This one is dated 10 years later. The sheriff suspects nothing. The governor's secrets remain hidden, but someone must remember. Someone must hold the truth when the time comes. And another, dated just 5 years ago. Clara is the last of the line. When I am gone, she must take my place. The needle awaits her. Clara's hands shake as she reads letter after letter. They span decades, always in the same handwriting, always signed with S. They speak of debts and gifts and responsibilities passed down through generations of women in her family. They mention names she recognizes from town: Sheriff Briggs, Governor Ashford, people her grandmother claimed to barely know. A photograph slips from between two letters and falls to the attic floor. Clara picks it up and her breath catches in her throat. Two women stand side by side in front of the farmhouse downstairs. One is definitely her grandmother, but younger than Clara ever saw her. Maybe 25 or 30. Her hair is dark instead of gray. her face unlined by years of worry. The woman beside her has silver hair and leather skin. She's wearing an eye patch over her left eye. She looks exactly like the stitcher Clara met today. Exactly the same. Not similar, not related. Identical. Clara flips the photograph over. Written in her grandmother's careful handwriting is a date from 50 years ago. Margaret and S. The debt is sealed. Clara sinks to her knees on the dusty attic floor. The photograph trembles in her hands. The woman who sewed her name into corners of a quilt today was standing in front of this house 50 years ago, looking exactly the same age. She grabs more photographs from the box. There are dozens of them, spanning decades. Her grandmother, at different ages, always standing beside the same silver-haired woman with the eye patch. The stitcher never changes, never ages, never looks different from one photograph to the next. In the most recent photograph, taken just months before her grandmother's death, both women stand beside the well behind the house. Her grandmother looks frail and tired. The stitcher looks exactly as she did 50 years earlier. Clara's grandmother is holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. The stitcher is holding a needle that catches the sunlight like a blade. Written on the back of this photograph, in handwriting Clara recognizes as her own despite having no memory of writing it, are 4 words. The thread continues on. Clara pushes through the glass door of the sheriff's office, the photograph clutched in her hand like evidence of a crime she doesn't understand yet. The bell above the door chimes, echoing off the water-stained ceiling tiles and faded wanted posters that line the walls. Sheriff Briggs looks up from his desk. He's been the law in this county for 30 years, his face mapped with lines that tell stories of too many late nights and too many difficult decisions. His uniform shirt strains against a belly that's grown soft with age, but his eyes are still sharp as broken glass. Clara wasn't expecting to see you today. I need to ask you about something. Clara approaches his desk, which is covered in case files and coffee-stained reports. The office smells like stale cigarettes and industrial cleaning solution. About my family. Your grandmother was a good woman, helped a lot of folks around here. That's what everyone says. Clara places the photograph face down on his desk. But there are things she never told me. Briggs leans back in his chair. It squeaks under his weight. What kind of things? Clara flips the photograph over. Briggs glances down at it and his face goes white as paper. His hand reaches automatically for the coffee mug beside his keyboard, but he doesn't lift it, just stares at the image of Clara's grandmother standing beside the one-eyed woman. Where did you find this? Grandmama's things. In the attic. Who is she? Briggs picks up the photograph with hands that shake slightly. He studies it for a long moment, his jaw working like he's chewing on words he doesn't want to say. Someone who should have stayed buried. What does that mean? How much did your grandmother tell you about the missing girls back in '93? Nothing. I was just a kid then. Briggs sets the photograph down carefully, like it might explode if handled wrong. 3 girls disappeared in the span of 2 weeks. Amy Chen, Sarah Rodriguez, and Beth Murphy. All of them between 16 and 18. All of them from good families. Clara sits down in the metal chair across from his desk. The cushion is torn and patched with duct tape. I remember people talking about it when I got older, but they always stopped when they saw me listening. We searched for months, had volunteers combing every inch of the county, brought in dogs, helicopters, the whole works. Nothing. It was like those girls just vanished into thin air. But you found them eventually. Not us. Briggs opens his desk drawer and pulls out a flask. He unscrews the cap and takes a sip, then offers it to Clara. She shakes her head. She found them. The woman in the photograph showed up at the station one morning in October. None of us had ever seen her before. Said she had information about the girls. What kind of information? She had a quilt with her. Hand-sewn, beautiful work. And in the corners, sewn in perfect little letters, were the names of all 3 girls. Briggs takes another sip from the flask. Amy Chen, Sarah Rodriguez, Beth Murphy. Clara feels the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. How could she have known their names? That's what I asked her. She just looked at me with that one eye and said the girls were calling to her. Said they wanted to come home. That's impossible. That's what I thought too, until she led us straight to them. Briggs stands up and walks to the window that looks out onto Main Street. The afternoon sun casts long shadows between the buildings. A few pickup trucks are parked diagonally in front of the diner. She walked us through the woods behind the old quarry. Never hesitated, never looked around to get her bearings. Just walked like she'd been there 100 times before. 20 minutes later, we found all 3 girls buried under a pile of rocks. Who killed them? Tommy Ashford, the governor's nephew. Rich kid from the capital who thought he could do whatever he wanted to small-town girls. Briggs turns back to Clara. We had enough evidence to put him away for life. DNA, fingerprints, witnesses who saw him with the girls. So, you arrested him. Tried to. But the morning after we found the bodies, Tommy was found hanging from a tree in his hotel room, used his own belt, left a confession note detailing everything he'd done to those girls. Clara's hands gripped the arms of her chair. Suicide? That's what the report said. But I always wondered. Tommy Ashford wasn't the type to feel guilty about anything. Kid was a sociopath from the day he was born. What happened to the woman, the stitcher? Disappeared the same night Tommy died. Left that quilt behind, though. Still have it locked up in evidence. Briggs returns to his desk and sits heavily. Never saw her again, until now. He taps the photograph with his finger. This picture was taken 50 years ago, Clara. I can tell by the cars in the background the style of your grandmother's dress. But that woman looks exactly the same as she did in '93. People age differently. Not like that. Not by 50 years without changing at all. Clara stands up abruptly. The chair scrapes against the linoleum floor. You're saying she's some kind of supernatural being. I'm saying I've seen things in this job that don't fit into neat little boxes. Things that make me question what's real and what's not. Briggs looks directly at Clara. And I'm saying your grandmother knew her, trusted her. Which means whatever this woman wants with you, it's connected to your family in ways you don't understand yet. She's making a quilt from Grandmama's dresses. With your name in the corners? Clara nods. Briggs reaches into his desk drawer again, but this time he pulls out his service weapon. He checks the chamber and slides it back into his holster. I think you need to stay away from her, Clara. Whatever debt your grandmother owed, whatever arrangement they had, it died with her. She said I have a gift, that it runs in my bloodline. Some gifts are curses in disguise. Clara picks up the photograph from his desk. In the fading afternoon light, the 2 women seem to be looking directly at her. What if I can't stay away? What if she won't let me? Briggs doesn't answer, but his hand stays close to his weapon. The truck engine idles outside the stitcher's cabin as Clara sits behind the wheel, trying to understand why she came back. It's past midnight. She should be home in bed, not parked on a dark road staring at a cabin that shouldn't exist. But something pulled her here, like a fish on a line, reeling her in against her will. The cabin windows glow with warm yellow light. Not electric light, candle flame that flickers and dances against the glass. Clara kills the engine and steps out into the cool night air. Crickets chirp in the tall grass, and somewhere in the distance, an owl calls to its mate. She approaches the cabin on silent feet, staying in the shadows cast by the pine trees. Through the front window, she can see the stitcher sitting at her work table. The woman's silver hair catches the candlelight as she bends over, fabric stretched tight in a wooden frame. Her needle moves in and out of the material with mechanical precision, each stitch identical to the last. But it's not the quilt Clara saw earlier. This is something different, darker. The fabric looks black in the candlelight, and the thread gleams like silver wire. The stitcher works without looking up, her single eye focused on the pattern emerging under her hands. Clara moves to the side window for a better view. From this angle, she can see the quilts hanging on the far wall more clearly. Each one displays intricate patterns in different colors. Some show geometric designs. Others depict scenes that look almost photographic in their detail. But it's the corners that make Clara's blood run cold. In each corner of every quilt, sewn in delicate script, are names. Clara squints through the glass, trying to read them in the flickering candlelight. Mary Hutchinson, dead 3 years ago from cancer. Clara remembers the funeral. James Bradley died in a farming accident last summer. Elizabeth Torres, heart attack in her sleep, found by her daughter 2 weeks ago. Every name belongs to someone Clara knows, someone who died recently, someone buried in the cemetery behind the white church on Elm Street. Come in, child. We have much to discuss. The voice comes from directly behind Clara. She spins around, heart hammering against her ribs. The Stitcher stands 3 feet away, somehow having left her cabin without Clara hearing the door open or close. "How did you know I was here?" "I always know when someone's watching." The Stitcher walks toward the front door. The dead don't rest easy when they're being observed. Clara follows, though every rational part of her mind screams to run back to the truck. The cabin door swings open at the Stitcher's approach, revealing the candlelit interior that looks completely different from how it appeared this afternoon. The quilts hang closer to the walls now, their patterns more visible in the dancing light. Clara can see dozens of names sewn into corners, hundreds maybe, all written in the same delicate script, all belonging to people who no longer draw breath. "You collect them. I preserve them." The Stitcher moves to her work table and picks up her needle. Every soul deserves to be remembered. Every story deserves to be told. These people are dead. Death is just another kind of sleep. The thread that connects them to this world can be rewoven if you know how. Clara approaches one of the quilts hanging near the window. Up close, she can see that the pattern isn't just decorative. It tells a story. A woman working in a garden. A man reading to children on a front porch. A family gathered around a dinner table. This is Mary Hutchinson. Every thread holds a memory. Every stitch preserves a moment that would otherwise be lost forever. She died of cancer. She suffered for months. The suffering is forgotten. Only the love remains. The Stitcher holds up the black fabric she's been working on. In the candlelight, Clara can see that it depicts a scene she recognizes. Her grandmother's kitchen. 2 women sitting at a table, hands clasped together. "This is for your grandmother. You can't bring her back. I can keep her close, just as she kept others close when it was her turn to hold the needle." Clara stares at the Stitcher. "Grandmama did this? Made quilts like these? For 40 years, until her hands grew too weak to hold the thread steady. Until her eyes could no longer see the patterns that needed to be woven. That's why she came to you. To pass on the responsibility, to ensure the thread would not be broken." The Stitcher sets down the black fabric and picks up a different quilt from a pile beside her chair. This one is white with blue trim, and Clara's name is already sewn into all 4 corners. "This is yours." "I don't want it." Want has nothing to do with it. The gift chooses who will carry it. Your grandmother was chosen. You have been chosen. What if I refuse? Then the dead will have no one to remember them. The stories will be lost. The thread will break. And everything your family has preserved for generations will disappear like morning mist. The candles flicker as if touched by an unfelt wind. In their dancing light, the quilts on the walls seem to move. Faces appear in the patterns. Hands reach out from woven scenes. Voices whisper just below the threshold of hearing. They're calling to you, Clara Hartwell, just as they called to your grandmother, just as they will call to whoever comes after you. Clara backs toward the door. "I need time to think." Time is the one thing the dead don't have. The Stitcher picks up her needle again. "But take what you need. The thread will wait." Clara reaches for the door handle but pauses. "What happens if I accept?" You learn to see beyond the veil. You learn to hold memories that would otherwise fade. You learn to be the guardian of stories that need to be told. "And if I don't?" The Stitcher's single eye fixes on Clara's face. In its depths, Clara sees something that makes her stomach clench with fear. "Then you join them." Clara's hand freezes on the door handle. The Stitcher's words hang in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. "Then you join them." The quilts on the walls seem to pulse with their own heartbeat, names glowing in the candlelight like brands on cattle. "What do you mean join them?" Every quilt needs a name in its corners. Every binding requires a soul to anchor it. The Stitcher sets down her needle and stands. "Your family line has provided both for generations." "That's insane." "Is it?" The Stitcher approaches a quilt hanging near the fireplace. The fabric shows a wedding scene, 2 young people standing beneath an oak tree. In the corners, sewn in silver thread, are names Clara doesn't recognize. This quilt binds the souls of Thomas and Martha Whitmore. Died in 1873 when cholera swept through the county. You're talking about people who died over a century ago. Time has no meaning for the dead. They exist in the spaces between moments, waiting for someone to remember them. The Stitcher traces the embroidered figures with her finger. Your great-great-grandmother was the first. She made the bargain that keeps your bloodline alive. Clara's legs feel weak. She stumbles to the wooden chair beside the work table and sits down hard. What bargain? Protection for her family in exchange for service. One woman from each generation would carry the gift, would see beyond the veil, would preserve the memories that bind the living to the dead. And if there's no one to carry it, then the debt comes due in full. Every soul your family has protected, every binding they've maintained, collapses at once. The Stitcher's single eye fixes on Clara. The dead would reclaim what was promised to them. Clara looks around the cabin with new understanding. Every quilt represents a bargain. Every name is a debt owed. The weight of generations presses down on her shoulders like lead. What price did my grandmother pay? The same one every woman in your line has paid. The gift. What gift? To see what others cannot. To know what others fear to learn. To hold the thread that connects the living world to the realm of the dead. The Stitcher moves to her work table and picks up a small glass vial filled with dark liquid. She uncorks it, and the smell of copper fills the air. Blood. Your grandmother's blood, given freely on the night she accepted her burden. Mixed with ash from the quilts of her mothers before her. You want my blood. I want your acceptance. The blood will come after, when you're ready to take up the needle yourself. Clara stands abruptly. The chair scrapes against the wooden floor. I won't do it. I won't be part of whatever twisted game you're playing. It's not a game, child. It's survival. The Stitcher replaces the cork in the vial with careful precision. Without the bindings, the dead would walk among the living. Without the memories preserved in these quilts, the past would consume the present. That sounds like superstitious nonsense. Does it? The Stitcher approaches Clara slowly, like someone trying not to spook a wild animal. Tell me, Clara Hartwell, have you ever woken up with dirt under your fingernails? Have you ever found yourself standing in places you don't remember going to? Clara's mouth goes dry. How do you know about that? Because the gift is already awakening in you. Your grandmother's death broke the seal that kept it dormant. The Stitcher reaches out and touches Clara's forehead with one cold finger. Let me show you what you're really seeing. Pain shoots through Clara's skull like lightning. Her vision blurs, and the cabin spins around her. She grabs the edge of the work table to keep from falling, her knuckles white against the dark wood. When her sight clears, the world has changed. Ghostly figures stand behind every quilt hanging on the walls. Translucent faces peer out from the fabric patterns, their eyes pleading and desperate. Some reach toward Clara with phantom hands. Others mouth words she can't hear but somehow understands. Remember us. Don't let us fade. Hold the thread. They've been trying to reach you for months, the Stitcher says. Her voice sounds far away, echoing from the bottom of a well. Ever since your grandmother passed, and the responsibility shifted to you. Clara turns in a slow circle, taking in the dozens of spirits that fill the small cabin. Men and women of all ages, some wearing clothes from decades past, others dressed in more recent styles, all of them watching her with the same hungry expression. They want to be remembered. They need to be remembered. Without the quilts to anchor them, they would drift into the void between worlds, lost forever. A young woman steps forward from the crowd of spirits. She's wearing a blue dress that Clara recognizes from one of the quilts on the far wall. Her lips move, forming words that Clara can almost hear. What is she saying? She's telling you her name, Sarah Chen, one of the girls who disappeared in '93. Clara's blood turns to ice water in her veins. But the sheriff said Tommy Ashford killed those girls. He did. But their souls were bound to quilts before justice could claim them. That's why Tommy died. The dead demanded payment for what he took. Another spirit moves forward. This one is older, wearing overalls and a work shirt stained with oil. His mouth moves in the same desperate rhythm. James Bradley. The farming accident last summer wasn't an accident. Governor Ashford needed his land for a development project. The governor? Power corrupts, child. Money silences witnesses, but the dead remember everything. The Stitcher's voice carries the weight of years. That's why the gift exists, to ensure justice finds its way, even when the law fails. More spirits press forward, each one trying to tell their story. Clara sees murders disguised as accidents, suicides that were really executions, disappearances that were carefully planned eliminations. All of them? All of them connected to the same corruption that's been eating away at this county for decades. Your grandmother spent 40 years collecting their stories, preserving their memories, waiting for someone with the power to act on what they revealed. Clara looks around at the sea of ghostly faces. Each one represents a life cut short, a story silenced, a truth buried. The weight of their collective need presses against her chest like a physical force. Why me? Because the gift runs strongest in the women of your line, because you have the sight to see beyond the veil and the strength to bear what you discover. The stitcher extends the needle toward Clara, because someone must hold the thread, and your grandmother's time is over. Clara stares at the needle. It's not just a sewing tool. It's a key that will unlock doors she's not sure she wants to open, but the spirits wait, and their need is greater than her fear. Clara stumbles out of the stitcher's cabin into the pre-dawn darkness, her head spinning from what she's seen. The ghostly figures are gone now, but their faces burn behind her eyelids like after-images from a camera flash. She reaches her truck on unsteady legs and grips the door handle, trying to anchor herself to something real. The drive back to town should take 15 minutes. Clara makes it in 8, pushing the speedometer past 60 on roads meant for half that speed. She needs to be around living people, needs to prove to herself that the world still makes sense. Main Street lies empty except for a few early risers heading to the diner for coffee and gossip. Clara parks in front of Henderson's General Store and sits behind the wheel, watching normal people go about their normal lives. Mrs. Patterson walks her dog. Old Joe Martinez sweeps the sidewalk in front of his barbershop. Everything looks exactly as it should. Then Clara sees him. A man in a blood-stained work shirt stands beside the barbershop, staring directly at her. His face is pale as paper, his eyes black holes in a skull that's been crushed on one side. He mouths words she can't hear but somehow understands. Help me. Remember me. Don't let them forget. Clara blinks hard, and when she opens her eyes, he's gone. But the feeling of being watched remains. She climbs out of the truck and walks toward the diner, needing coffee and the comfort of mundane conversation. But with each step, more figures appear in her peripheral vision. A woman in a torn dress standing beside the post office. A teenage boy with a rope burn around his neck, leaning against the bank. An elderly man whose chest has been caved in by some massive impact. All of them staring at Clara with the same desperate hunger. You see them now. Clara spins around. The stitcher stands behind her, somehow having appeared without making a sound. In the morning light, she looks older than she did in the cabin, more fragile, but her single eye burns with an intensity that makes Clara want to step backward. They're everywhere. They've always been everywhere. You just couldn't see them before. The stitcher approaches slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. Every soul that dies with unfinished business. Every person whose story was cut short before it could be told. Why are they showing themselves to me? Because the gift has awakened fully. Because you can see beyond the veil now, just as your grandmother could. Just as I do. Clara looks around Main Street with new understanding. The dead outnumber the living 3-1. They stand in doorways and lean against lampposts, all of them watching her with the same pleading expression. The quilts in your cabin, they're connected to these people. Each quilt holds a soul. Each pattern tells a story. Each name preserves a memory that would otherwise be lost forever. The stitcher follows Clara's gaze to a young woman standing beside the hardware store. That's Michelle Torres. Died in what they called a car accident 3 years ago, but the brake lines were cut. By who? Someone with enough money to make problems disappear. Someone with enough power to silence witnesses. The stitcher's voice carries the weight of accumulated knowledge. Her story is preserved in a quilt with blue roses and silver thread. When the time comes, her testimony will be heard. What time? When justice demands an accounting, when the scales must be balanced. Clara walks toward the diner, needing to move, needing to process what she's learning. The dead part before her like a curtain, their ghostly forms stepping aside to clear her path, but their eyes never leave her face. I don't want this responsibility. Neither did your grandmother. Neither did I. Then why do you do it? Why continue this insane bargain? Because someone must remember, someone must hold the threads. The Stitcher keeps pace beside Clara, her footsteps silent on the concrete sidewalk. Without the quilts, these souls would be lost forever. Without someone to see them, to preserve their stories, justice would never find its way. Clara stops walking and turns to face the Stitcher directly. What happened to the woman who had this gift before my grandmother? She tried to walk away. Tried to pretend the responsibility wasn't hers to bear. What happened to her? She joined them. The Stitcher nods toward the crowd of spirits watching from the shadows. When you refuse the gift, it claims you instead. The dead need their keeper, Clara Hartwell, with or without your consent. A chill runs down Clara's spine that has nothing to do with the morning air. That's not a choice. That's coercion. The dead don't understand the difference. They only know need. Clara looks around at the ghostly figures surrounding them, men and women of all ages, all wearing the expressions of people who died before their time. Some show obvious signs of violence. Others look peaceful, as if they simply went to sleep and never woke up. How many of them are there? In this county? Hundreds. Across the region? Thousands. The corruption runs deep, child, deeper than you can imagine. And they all want justice. They all want to be remembered. Justice is just one form of memory. Clara starts walking again, her mind racing with implications. If what the Stitcher says is true, then the quilts aren't just memorials. They're evidence. Testimony from witnesses who can't be silenced because they're already dead. Governor Ashford knows about you. He suspects. But he's never been certain. That's why your grandmother's death worried him. That's why he's been asking questions around town. What kind of questions? About you. About whether you've shown signs of the gift. About whether you've been visiting certain cabins in the woods. Clara feels ice water in her veins. He knows I came to see you. He knows someone has been asking about old photographs. Someone has been going through dusty attics and reading letters that should have stayed hidden. Sheriff Briggs. Works for the governor when the price is right. Always has. Clara stops walking again. The weight of betrayal settles on her shoulders like a lead blanket. The sheriff told the governor I have the photograph. He told him more than that. He told him you're starting to see things, starting to ask the right questions. Then I'm in danger. We're all in danger, child. The question is whether you're willing to do something about it. Clara drives toward the state capitol building with the Stitcher sitting silent beside her. The government complex rises from the valley like a monument to power, its white columns and manicured lawns designed to inspire confidence in authority. But through Clara's newly awakened sight, she sees something else entirely. Ghostly figures stand scattered across the grounds, dozens of them, all staring at the building with expressions of rage and betrayal, all bearing the marks of violent death. They're drawn here, the Stitcher says quietly, to the source of their suffering. Clara parks in the visitor lot and cuts the engine. Her hands shake slightly as she grips the steering wheel. How many? I've lost count over the years. Governor Ashford has been in office for 23 years. 23 years of cleaning up problems with bullets and shallow graves. A young woman appears beside Clara's truck window. She's wearing a college sweatshirt and jeans, her blonde hair matted with dried blood. Her mouth moves in desperate silence, forming words Clara can somehow understand. Tell them what happened to me. Tell them I didn't run away. Sarah Morrison. The Stitcher follows Clara's gaze. Disappeared 18 months ago. Her parents think she's backpacking through Europe. What really happened to her? She was a journalism student, writing a story about irregularities in state construction contracts. She got too close to the truth. More spirits materialize around the truck. A middle-aged man in a business suit with a bullet hole in his forehead. An elderly woman whose neck sits at an unnatural angle. A teenage boy whose chest has been caved in by some massive impact. They all discovered something they shouldn't have. Or they simply stood in the way of progress. The Stitcher opens her door and steps out onto the asphalt. Money has a way of removing obstacles, whether human or otherwise. Clara follows, her legs unsteady beneath her. The weight of so many desperate souls presses against her consciousness like a physical force. Each ghost tries to tell their story simultaneously, creating a cacophony of silent screams that threatens to drive her to her knees. I can't handle this many at once. You'll learn to filter the voices. Your grandmother could speak to specific souls while blocking out the others. How long did it take her to develop that skill? Years. But you don't have years. Governor Ashford announces his presidential campaign next week. Once he has national attention, he becomes untouchable. They walk toward the main building, weaving between the ghostly figures that crowd the walkways. Security guards nod respectfully as they pass through the metal detectors, unaware they're being followed by an army of the dead. Governor Ashford's office occupies the entire top floor of the building. His secretary, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and predatory smile, looks up from her desk as Clara and the Stitcher approach. "Do you have an appointment?" "We're here about the missing girls." Clara's voice sounds steadier than she feels. "The ones who disappeared last year." The secretary's expression doesn't change, but something flickers behind her eyes. Fear, recognition. "I'm sorry, but the governor's schedule is completely booked today. Tell him Clara Hartwell is here. Tell him I have something that belongs to him." The secretary reaches for her phone with obvious reluctance. She speaks in hushed tones, her eyes never leaving Clara's face. After a moment, she hangs up and forces a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "He'll see you now." Governor Ashford stands behind his desk as they enter his office. He's a tall man with silver hair and the kind of practiced charm that wins elections and covers up sins. But Clara sees him differently now. Through her awakened sight, she can see the darkness that clings to him like a second shadow. "Miss Hartwell, I've heard so much about you from Sheriff Briggs." "I'm sure you have. And you must be the seamstress everyone's been talking about." His gaze shifts to the Stitcher, and Clara sees something that might be recognition flicker across his features. "I thought you'd left our little community years ago." "I go where the work takes me." Governor Ashford gestures to two chairs facing his desk. "Please, sit. What can I do for you ladies?" Clara remains standing. Around the office, ghostly figures begin to materialize. The three young women from last year, Sarah Morrison with her bloody hair, Jennifer Walsh, whose body was never found, Maria Santos, who supposedly ran away to join a cult. You see now why the gift exists. To catch killers. To ensure justice finds its way, even when law fails. Governor Ashford's smile falters slightly. "I'm sorry. What gift are we discussing?" "The gift to see what others cannot. To hear the voices of those you thought you'd silenced forever." Clara steps closer to his desk. "They're all here, Governor. Every person you've had killed. Every problem you've solved with violence. I think there's been some misunderstanding. Sarah Morrison was writing about construction contracts. Jennifer Walsh discovered discrepancies in the state budget. Maria Santos found out about the bribes you take from developers." Clara's voice grows stronger with each name. "They're all standing in this room right now, waiting for someone to tell their stories." Governor Ashford's hand moves toward the desk drawer where Clara assumes he keeps a weapon, but the Stitcher speaks before he can reach it. "The quilts are already finished, Governor. Every victim, every crime, every cover-up. All preserved in thread and fabric where they can't be destroyed or buried or forgotten." "Quilts." His laugh sounds forced. "You expect me to be frightened by sewing projects? I expect you to understand that the dead remember everything, and they're tired of waiting for justice." The ghostly figures around the office begin to move closer to the governor's desk. Their faces show the rage of people who died before their time, whose stories were silenced by money and power. Governor Ashford sees them now. Clara can tell by the way his face goes pale, by the way his eyes dart around the room, tracking movement only she and the Stitcher should be able to perceive. "What do you want?" "Truth." Clara places her hands on his desk and leans forward. "A full confession. Every murder, every cover-up, every life you've destroyed in service of your ambition. And if I refuse, then the dead will take what they're owed." Governor Ashford leans back in his leather chair, his confidence returning like armor, sliding back into place. The ghostly figures surrounding his desk don't seem to bother him anymore. He's a man who survived decades of political warfare by never showing weakness, never admitting fault. "You're talking about things that happened years ago, ancient history. Murder doesn't have a statute of limitations." "Murder?" He laughs, the sound echoing off the mahogany walls of his office. "I think you've been listening to too many ghost stories, Miss Hartwell." Clara reaches into the canvas bag she's been carrying and pulls out a folded quilt. The fabric is deep burgundy with silver thread, forming intricate patterns across its surface. She unfolds it carefully, revealing scenes that make Governor Ashford's face go pale. The quilt depicts his office in perfect detail. There, he stands behind his desk, shaking hands with a man whose face is obscured by shadow. Money changes hands. Documents are signed. In the corner of the scene, a young woman lies crumpled on the floor, her neck twisted at an impossible angle. "Where did you get that?" "The same place I got this." Clara unfolds the quilt completely, revealing all four corners. In each one, sewn in delicate script, is the same name repeated. William Ashford, William Ashford, William Ashford, William Ashford. The governor stands abruptly, knocking his chair backward. That's impossible. No one could have known about that meeting. The dead see everything. They remember everything. You can't prove anything with that. It's just fabric and thread. I don't have to prove anything. The truth has a way of surfacing. Not if you don't live to tell it. Governor Ashford reaches for his desk drawer, but the stitcher moves faster than Clara thought possible. Her weathered hand slams down on his wrist, pinning it to the desk with surprising strength. Justice doesn't always come through courts and law, Governor. Sometimes it comes through older, deeper currents. Get your hands off me. The debt must be paid. The scales must be balanced. The stitcher's single eye burns with an intensity that makes the air in the room feel electric. You've taken dozens of lives. Now the dead demand payment in kind. Governor Ashford tries to pull his hand free, but the stitcher's grip is like iron. Around the office, the ghostly figures begin to move closer. Their faces show the hunger of people who've waited too long for satisfaction. This is insane. You're both insane. Are we? Clara steps closer to the desk. Tell me, Governor, how did you sleep last night? Did you dream about them? About the people you've killed? His face twists with something that might be fear. I don't know what you're talking about. Sarah Morrison came to you looking for an interview about construction contracts. You had her killed and made it look like she ran away from home. That's ridiculous. Jennifer Walsh discovered you've been skimming money from state education funds. You had her car forced off the road and into Miller's Creek. You can't prove any of this. Maria Santos found out about your arrangement with the developers who want to build a casino on state land. She disappeared on her way home from work one night. Governor Ashford's breathing becomes rapid and shallow. Sweat beads on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Even if any of that were true, which it's not, you still have no evidence that would hold up in court. Who said anything about court? Clara spreads the quilt wider across his desk. The burgundy fabric seems to pulse with its own inner light. The dead don't need judges and juries. They have their own justice system. What are you going to do? Sew me to death. The stitcher releases his wrist and reaches into her coat pocket. She pulls out a needle that gleams like silver wire in the office lighting. But this isn't an ordinary sewing needle. It's longer, sharper, more like a surgical instrument than a crafting tool. Every thread tells a story. Every stitch binds a soul. Every pattern preserves a truth that can never be destroyed. Governor Ashford backs away from his desk, moving toward the window that overlooks the state capitol grounds. You're both completely insane. Guards, security. They can't hear you. Clara points to the door of his office. Through the glass, she can see his secretary sitting at her desk. But the woman's movements are too slow, too deliberate, like someone moving underwater. Time works differently when the dead are near. This isn't possible. Neither was covering up 37 murders over 23 years. But you managed that just fine. The stitcher approaches Governor Ashford slowly, the needle held between her fingers like a sacred relic. Around the office, the ghostly figures form a circle, blocking every avenue of escape. The pattern is almost complete. One more thread, and the binding will be finished. Stay away from me. Governor Ashford fumbles for his cell phone, but his fingers won't work properly. The device slips from his grasp and shatters on the marble floor. He looks around desperately, searching for some way out, but the dead have him surrounded. Please, I have money. I can pay you whatever you want. We don't want your money. Clara's voice carries the weight of generations. We want justice. I'll confess. I'll tell everyone what I did. I'll go to prison. Prison isn't enough. Not for what you've done. The stitcher raises the needle above her head. In the office lighting, it casts shadows that look like tiny nooses across the governor's face. The dead don't forgive. They don't forget. They only collect what's owed to them. Wait. Governor Ashford holds up his hands, his voice cracking with desperation. There's something you need to know. About your grandmother. About why she really made the bargain. Clara freezes. What about her? She didn't just agree to preserve the dead. She agreed to feed them. To give them fresh souls when the old debts weren't enough to sustain the bindings. That's a lie. Is it? Ask her. Governor Ashford points toward the corner of the office where a new figure has appeared. Clara's grandmother stands there, wearing the blue dress she was buried in, but her face shows guilt instead of peace. Ask her how many people she killed to keep the dead satisfied. Clara turns to the stitcher, but the woman's single eye reveals nothing but infinite sadness. The gift always demands a price, child. The dead must be fed. The thread must be maintained. Someone must make the hard choices so others can sleep peacefully in their beds. No. Your grandmother understood, just as you will understand when it's your turn to hold the needle. The ghostly figures move closer to Governor Ashford. Their hands reach out like hungry mouths. Their eyes burn with the need for vengeance that's been denied too long. And Clara realizes that justice, like the thread that binds the living to the dead, sometimes requires blood to make it strong. The stitcher's cabin feels different when Clara returns from the Capitol building. The air hums with electricity, as if a storm is building just beyond the horizon. The woman sits at her work table, needle moving through fabric with mechanical precision. Clara's grandmother's quilt spreads across her lap, nearly complete. How long have you been working on it? Since the night your grandmother died. Some patterns take months to finish properly. The stitcher doesn't look up from her needlework. Every stitch must be perfect. Every thread must hold. Clara watches the needle flash in and out of the blue and yellow fabric. The pattern tells the story of her grandmother's life in perfect detail. Her wedding day, Clara's birth, quiet moments in the kitchen where wisdom was passed down through recipes and stories. The governor is finished. I know. The stitcher's fingers never pause. The dead are satisfied. Their stories will finally be told. As if summoned by her words, sirens begin wailing in the distance. The sound grows closer, echoing off the pine trees that surround the cabin. Clara moves to the window and peers through the glass. Red and blue lights flash through the forest, heading toward town. It's happening already. Justice delayed is not justice denied. It simply takes a different form. Clara's phone buzzes with a news alert. She reads it aloud. Governor Ashford arrested on multiple charges of corruption and conspiracy. Anonymous tips lead federal agents to evidence spanning decades. Anonymous tips. The dead have many ways of communicating when they need to. File cabinets unlock themselves. Documents appear on desks overnight. Witnesses remember things they thought they'd forgotten. Another alert. Former sheriff admits to decades of cover-ups. Claims he was threatened into silence. Briggs. His conscience finally caught up with him. Fear of the living pales compared to fear of the dead. Clara continues reading. State Attorney General calls for full investigation into construction contracts, missing persons cases, and campaign finance violations dating back 20 years. The thread is unraveling. Once it starts, it cannot be stopped. The stitcher ties off a knot and sets down her needle. She holds up the completed quilt, shaking it out so Clara can see the full pattern. The fabric seems to glow in the afternoon light streaming through the window. It's beautiful. Your grandmother's story, preserved forever. Every joy, every sorrow, every moment of love and loss. Clara studies the intricate needlework. In one corner, she sees herself as a child, standing beside her grandmother in the kitchen. In another, she recognizes the farmhouse where she grew up, the well behind the house, the garden where her grandmother taught her to plant tomatoes. Then she sees the names sewn into the corners, not her grandmother's name as she expected. Clara Hartwell, Clara Hartwell, Clara Hartwell, Clara Hartwell. Why is my name there? Because this quilt isn't just about your grandmother. It's about the continuation of her work, the passing of responsibility from one generation to the next. Clara feels something shift inside her chest. A weight settling into place, but not the crushing burden she expected. Instead, it feels like coming home after a long journey. It's not a death sentence. No, child, it's a covenant, an agreement to carry on what came before, to hold the thread that connects the living to the dead. The stitcher stands and moves to the chest in the corner. When she lifts the lid, Clara sees dozens of needles arranged in precise rows, silver and gold and steel, some ancient and others that look newly forged. Each needle has been passed down through generations of women. Each one holds the power to bind souls, to preserve memories, to ensure that justice finds its way. She selects a needle that gleams like starlight and returns to Clara. This was your grandmother's, and her grandmother's before her. Now it belongs to you. Clara takes the needle with reverence. It's warm to the touch, as if it's been sitting in sunlight. The metal feels alive against her skin, humming with energy she can't explain, but somehow understands. What happens now? Now you learn, you practice, you develop the skills your bloodline has carried for generations. And you. I'll stay until you're ready, until you can see the patterns clearly and sew the threads without guidance. The stitcher's single eye softens. Then I'll rest. A knock at the cabin door interrupts them. Clara turns toward the sound, surprised. Few people know about this place, and fewer still would brave the journey through the woods to find it. Expecting someone? There's always someone who needs help, someone whose story needs to be preserved. The stitcher opens the door to reveal a young woman with tear-stained cheeks and desperate eyes. She's holding a bundle of men's clothing against her chest like a shield. Are you the woman who makes memory quilts? I am. What's your name, child? Anna. Anna Chen. My brother disappeared 3 months ago. The police say he ran away, but I know something happened to him. Something terrible. Clara's blood runs cold. Chen. Like Amy Chen, one of the girls who disappeared in '93. The girl whose story was sewn into a quilt that led to Tommy Ashford's death. Please, I have his clothes, his favorite shirt, his work jacket. I just want something to remember him by, something that proves he existed. The stitcher looks at Clara with eyes that hold decades of knowledge. Your turn, child. Someone new needs remembering. Clara steps forward, the needle warm in her palm. Anna Chen looks at her with the same desperate hope Clara recognizes from her own face just days ago. The hope of someone who needs answers, who needs justice, who needs their story to be heard. Come in, Clara says, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she's accepting. Tell me about your brother. As Anna steps into the cabin, Clara sees the ghostly figure of a young man materialize behind her. His face bears the marks of violence, his eyes the hunger of someone whose story has been silenced too soon. But not anymore. Clara closes the door and picks up a length of thread. The needle catches the light as she begins to work, continuing the pattern that her grandmother started, that her great-grandmother maintained, that now belongs to her. The thread continues on, binding the living to the dead, ensuring that no story is ever truly lost. Outside, sirens wail as Governor Ashford's empire crumbles, but inside the cabin, the work of remembering begins anew. The cabin Clara built in the woods behind her grandmother's farmhouse feels more like home than any place she's ever lived. 3 rooms with handmade furniture and quilts hanging from every wall like silent guardians. Each one tells a story. Each one preserves a memory that would otherwise be lost to time and deliberate forgetting. Winter light filters through windows that look out onto bare oak trees and snow-covered ground. The fireplace crackles with split hickory, filling the air with the scent of wood smoke and resin. Clara sits at her work table, needle moving through fabric with the practiced precision that comes from months of constant practice. The quilt stretched across her lap depicts a family gathering around a Christmas tree. Parents and children laughing together, unaware that their happiness would be shattered by a drunk driver 3 days after the photograph was taken. In the corners, sewn in silver thread, are the names of the victims, the Morrison family, all 5 of them. Clara ties off a knot and examines her work. The stitches are even and tight, holding the memories in place like anchors in a storm. She's gotten better at this. Much better. The old stitcher would be proud. A sound from outside makes her look up. Footsteps crunching through the snow, approaching the cabin with the hesitant gait of someone who's not sure they should be here. Clara sets down her needle and moves to the window. A young woman stands at the edge of the clearing, clutching a canvas bag against her chest. She's maybe 25, with dark hair and the kind of hollow expression that comes from carrying secrets too heavy for one person to bear alone. She takes a few steps toward the cabin, stops, then takes a few more. Clara watches her approach. She can see the internal battle playing out on the woman's face. The desperate need for help warring with the fear of what that help might cost. Clara remembers that feeling, the weight of carrying burdens that no one else seems to understand. The woman reaches the porch and raises her fist to knock on the door. Clara opens it before her knuckles can touch wood. "You're here about the quilt." The woman's eyes widen. "How did you know that?" "I've been expecting you." Clara steps aside and gestures for the woman to enter. The cabin's warmth wraps around them both as the door closes against the winter cold. The visitor looks around at the quilts hanging on every available surface, her gaze lingering on the names sewn into each corner. "My name is Rachel Torres. I heard about you from Anna Chen. Anna's brother found peace. His story is preserved now. I brought my father's things." Rachel holds up the canvas bag with trembling hands. "He died 6 months ago. Everyone says it was suicide, but I know it wasn't. He would never have left us like that." Clara nods toward the wooden chair beside her work table. "Sit." "Tell me about him." Rachel settles into the chair, still clutching the bag like a lifeline. "He was a good man, worked construction for 30 years, never missed a day, never complained about the long hours or the dangerous jobs." "What changed?" "He started asking questions about the governor's casino project, the one they built on state land near Miller's Creek. Said the contracts didn't make sense, that someone was getting rich off crooked deals." Clara continues working on the Morrison family quilt while she listens. Her hands know the rhythm now. Needle in and out, thread pulling tight, memories taking shape under her fingers. "He went to a meeting with some state investigators, said he had evidence of fraud, of bribes, of safety violations that were covered up. That was a Tuesday. Friday morning, they found him hanging in his garage. But you don't believe he killed himself. He left me a voicemail the night before he died, said if anything happened to him, I should look for the woman in the woods who makes quilts that remember the dead." Clara's hands pause in their work. "Your father knew about me?" "He said his grandfather told him stories about women who preserve the truth when the powerful try to bury it, about quilts that hold justice when the courts fail. Your father was right to send you here." Clara sets down the Morrison quilt and moves to the chest where she keeps her supplies. Inside, arranged in careful rows, are spools of thread in every color imaginable, needles of different sizes and purposes, fabric scissors that stay sharp no matter how much she uses them. "What do you need from me?" "I want his story told. I want the truth preserved. I want the people who killed him to face justice, even if it takes years." "Justice always finds its way, Rachel Torres, sometimes through courts and law, sometimes through older, deeper currents." Clara selects a piece of dark blue fabric and spreads it across her work table. "Your father's favorite color?" "Navy blue. He wore it to church every Sunday." "Then that's where we'll start." Rachel opens her bag and pulls out a work shirt, a pair of boots, and a photograph of a smiling man with calloused hands and kind eyes. Clara examines each item, feeling the memories they hold like heat radiating from a stove. He was proud of his work, prouder of his family. He wanted me to go to college, to have opportunities he never had. Education is a form of justice too. Knowledge is power, and power can be used to protect the innocent. Clara picks up her needle and threads it with navy blue. The first stitch goes into the corner where she'll eventually sew Rachel's father's name, Roberto Torres, a man who died because he refused to stay silent when staying silent would have kept him safe. This will take time, weeks, maybe months. Are you prepared to wait? I've been waiting for justice my whole life. A few more months won't matter. Clara smiles. Then we begin. Outside the cabin, snow continues to fall on the forest where secrets sleep beneath the trees. But inside, the work of remembering continues. The needle passes through fabric. The thread holds memories in place. Names wait to be sewn into corners, some for protection, others for justice, all for remembering. The thread remains unbroken. The work continues. The dead find their voices through the hands of the living, and truth, like winter, always returns in its season.